Greetings again, Cinema Appreciation class. I hope you're doing fantastically well. Today we're covering the topic in a mini lecture on cinematography. Again, the cinematography or the cinematographer, the person who does it, is also known as the director of photography or sometimes called the DP. And this individual is responsible for arranging and controlling the lighting of a film and the quality of photography like we see here in Titanic. So as you think through the different things, think about all the aspects of lighting that have actually taken place in the introduction of Wizard of Oz. Again, we talked about Wizard of Oz last time for its introduction of costume and makeup departments, which had never existed before in film. I think the other thing that is amazing is the idea of the introduction of color as well, which challenges the photographer to think through all sorts of new issues in terms of shade and shadow that shows up. So here's that first scenario. When cinematographers do their job well, it is noticeable and it can help transport you into another world. And that's why they spend so much time working with the lighting guys that we talked about last time, and now lighting girls. It used to all be lighting guys, the lighting individuals, to make sure that the scene happens. And another thing they have to do is consider the idea of color. So what is the difference between Méliès's Trip to the Moon in black and white versus in color? Note, black and white over here. You can actually occasionally find it in a black and white version online or on YouTube. It is copyright free generally. And then we also have the lovely image over here where we have that Trip to the Moon in black and white in color. So what's the difference? All right, the one, the black and the white with the deep shadows then becomes much more foreboding, a little bit more on the scary side that shows up. All right, and then what about the individual, sorry, I'm adjusting here. And then what about the idea of the color? All right, that color really pops, particularly the primary, I mean, if you look at it, we have complementary colors, the reds versus the greens, and the greens and the yellows then, this kind of natural flow of color that shows up. All right, which makes certain things recede and pop into the foreground, the distance, where we don't have that nearly as much to the same level here. Artists have often used, and filmmakers have often used this color to represent different things. So here, from one of the most racist films of all time, this is a film we'll spend some time on later on when we talk about editing. D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation has printed scenes on various colored film stocks to evoke emotion. So they want to show you the verdant green and how well things are growing. The film stock, everything was chosen green. For nighttime, they chose blue. And then for fire and destruction, particularly the burning of Atlanta, they chose red as a film stock itself, because otherwise you have to hand draw and hand paint 24 frames per second for every time you want to do that. And that is very arduous, particularly for a big budget production that shows up, because they always have to be right. And so it's an idea of trying to incorporate the idea of color emotionality. Because if you don't know this, when we look at lines in film, so like diagonal lines for energy and for motion, see it here as well, that actually is an intellectual process. Your brain interprets that. Your emotional center is what actually interprets color. So it's much more direct reference to your real world. We can see this played off also in Life is Beautiful, an Academy Award film from a number of years ago. Note early on in the film, if you don't know the plot line, this individual is a Jewish individual during Nazi Germany. And in the overtake of the Nazis over, he's Italian, but in the overtake of the Nazis over different aspects of his world, him and his son are putting into a concentration camp, actually a working camp. And so he, as a fantastic father, makes it a game about how much they can suffer through in the concentration camp. And so they make a game of it when they see the Nazis. They dance around and they do what they're supposed to do, but they're given different rules as the film progresses. And slowly over time, the filmmaker bleeds the color out of the film. So at the very end, you can see the downtrodden, like these people are nearing death. And so that's really a transformational aspect that can be used in film over time to show you life is beautiful, but then life is not beautiful. And the sun picks up on that as well. Another thing that the cinematographer, besides the coloration and the movement, gets to choose and select on is to play around with different types of cameras. So there's wide angle and telephoto. An extreme wide angle photo will eventually become a fisheye photo. It shows up. So what a wide angle photo or wide angle camera lens is, it's when you want deep focus photography. That means you want everything to be um, in focus. So you want your foreground in focus, at the same time you want your midground in focus, and you want your background all the way back here in focus. So this is for deep focus photography. Now, of course, there's got to be a negative if there's a positive, and this is reinforces the connections to depth, but it exaggerates depth between planes. So now this looks like it's, enormously kind of close to what it actually should be. And so the plane depths, as you can see, versus the background here, they are very different depths. So it plays and distorts the depths between planes, but you get everything in focus. The telephoto lens is fantastic, particularly because it gives you a way of going into potentially a dangerous scene. There's a lion attacking you want to see, but you want to stay safely away from it. So you go to there. Otherwise, if you're by there, the lion might actually eat you too. And so it allows close-ups from extreme distances. The cinematographer in the cinematography does not have to be near a subject. So you can also get like paparazzi shots behind a lovely bush and it zooms into what it is. It gets sharp focus though. The problem is only in one area. So here's the sharp focus. Note, even the middle ground, the woman here is out of focus and the background is absolutely out of focus. And at extreme wide angles from the telephoto, the fisheye, you're going to see this curvature, which we use sometimes when we want to show the reference of the way one person's circular eye sees things, but in film we don't often use this viewpoint at all. Now, here is where, and I've mentioned this one other time so far in this class, there are certain times where the magic of movies, I need to ruin it for you. And that's because we're in a cinema class, so we're going to hide behind the magic of the movie. And this is one of the things that many contemporary color gradient and cinematographers hate about contemporary films. And that is, and if you don't want to know this, turn it off for a moment. Just skip ahead about 3 minutes. Most contemporary films have a blue-orange, see the blue-orange contemporary image that shows up here. So that's called color gradation. It used to be that you would spend hours and hours, weeks and weeks, and sometimes even months color grading everything within a film to make sure that the film gradient works well. But now with the newfound production schedule and also with computer technology, we can color grade in a matter of hours or a couple of days and maybe at most a week. The problem with that is that you don't see subtle gradations. You've got to choose a color scheme as the dominant scheme. And the dominant scheme, as you can see from all these lovely individuals, are the complementary colors in blue and orange. First off, why complementary colors? They pop the most, red and green on screen, blue and orange. And so the next question becomes, why blue and orange? And the range really comes at the main thing that's on the screen at most time that we concentrate on are different tonalities of human skin, from white or cream all the way to brown or black. The color that actually best represents and shows that gradation is orange. And you can see this even in the photographs sometimes of, President Trump. See this orangey hue when he's actually been manipulated in terms of films as well. And so we generally show human skin more often than, and the human body more often than anything else. So we grade it for orange. The complement to orange is blue, this cool sheer aesthetic. And so note how it really does play off. And these are just randomly chosen movie posters that show up. So fiery orange and cool blue then are strongly associated with opposing concepts that shows up in films. Fire and ice, earth and sky, land and sea, day and night, invested humanism versus elegant indifference, a cool, calm aesthetic, good old-fashioned explosion versus futuristic science stuff. It's a trope because it's used on purpose and it does mean something. And so it could be that we spent an extra month or two color grading these by color, by what we do, but we now use a computer gradient. And this is why. So when we use blue and orange, and these are hue densities across film trailers, note the blues and the orange, because the color of the human skin looks best under orange, versus any of these other colorations when we have multiple people with different skin tonalities. So the opposite is blue. So you could actually see the difference. Here's the actual shot, but in towards when we add the blue and green filter, note that green pops nicely. When we get a little bit more yellow, that shows up here. But note how beautiful the skin tonality now shows up versus this very pale, looks like it was shot in the 1950s. This is the new color gradation that we actually use. And we can see it. The film where it actually started it all off is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou by the Coen brothers. They wanted to have this sepia tone, and so this is one of the films that's on your top 100 list for the variation in color. So Oh Brother, Where Art Thou by the Coen brothers, you write that down. Sepia tone, so they seeped all the other color out to get this yellowish, brownish, to make it look like it's from the 1920s. Blade Runner, way back in the 1980s, did cool blue before it was even a cool style. But it had to be, excuse me, we just had computers that were coming in that were able to do this. And so it wasn't a complete color gradient like we have with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou by 2000. So explain how this image was shot. From everything you know, let's talk about lighting and shot as we'll go through here. So first off, shot is going to be good, mid shot. We see the face, the body would be right about here. So this is a mid shot. How many lighting sources do we have? Good. We have the overhead light, which isn't going to pick this up. And then we have another light. Now, what's interesting about this shot, you may not think about, is that this is actually a reflection shot. So we have an overhead shot. In his lap den is a little circular disc that is actually angled specifically to reflect the light back here. And that's why we have that soft, muted light that shows up here. So sometimes we can use reflections, tinfoil, paper plates, frisbees with tinfoil on them for cheap modicums of way of being able to do this. White umbrella flashes to kick back the light. Anything reflective can do to reflect that light. And that's all we have actually for cinematography. So it was a short mini lecture because it uses everything else that we've talked about so far. Lighting from the earlier lecture, talking about shot and angle. So it's a pretty remarkable thing. This is what takes the most time, is setting up the lighting and the conditions of the cinematographer whenever you're on screen. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Bye.